And so today we're going to look at the next chapter of this story we began 2 weeks ago. We've heard about the creation of the cosmos, and we were asked to marvel at the wonders of our Creator. We've been told about the creation of man and woman and how they wanted more than they were allowed. They wanted to know things out of their reach. And as a consequence, they were formed a wedge between themselves and their Creator, something they can never get back on their own terms. Now humanity is forced out of paradise. Now they have to survive the wilds where they have to work hard to eat, to find comfort, and to live. They still need to look after creation, but it is as if creation is against them. They now have to work the land and keep the herds of animals under their watchful eyes. And then we come to the next chapter in our story, one that talks of how human aggression damages the human community. The will of God is now somehow hidden behind the story. The relationship of humans appear to embrace the power of death as opposed to the power of life. And particularly in Genesis, the relationships between brothers are often troubled. We read of Jacob and Esau, one taking the birthrights from the other, Joseph being sold into slavery by his older brothers. As this is often the case in the Bible, God favors the underdog, seeing something of promise, a speck of truth within them that is concealed from the rest of us. In this chapter, we are introduced to the sons of Adam and Eve. And the book of Genesis, which up till now has focused on the vertical relationship of God and humanity, now looks at the horizontal between humanity itself. The story moves from travesty of being excluded from Eden, from the provision and protection of God, to a scandal of epic proportions. The storyteller sets the scene. Eve gives birth to 2 sons, Cain and Abel, the younger. When they grow up, each are given a specific task. Each has their own particular vocation. Cain farms the land, growing all sorts of wonderful things, fruit, vegetable, and grains, whereas Abel is given the task of looking after the animals. He is the first shepherd. And as ever, the Hebrew names mean particular things. Cain means to create or to get, whereas Abel means vapor or nothingness. Right at the beginning, all hope is placed on Cain, the firstborn, and Abel is dismissed as worthless. However, when we get to the New Testament, Abel is described as a man of faith in Hebrews 11, and Cain is considered as the form of evil in 1 John 3 and Jude. Now all that is beheld in the eyes of humanity is seen by the eyes of God, and Abel's true strengths are hidden away. Now the brothers both want to thank God for the good things that he has provided for them. So they plan a family Thanksgiving to worship God. That's brilliant, isn't it? That's great. A family Thanksgiving. Both bring their best. Cain brings the crops he has harvested, and Abel brings some choice cuts of fat from the firstborn of the flock. As each gift is offered to God, God looks with favor on the gift of Abel. The storyteller does not tell us why, although many have imposed their thoughts on this over the years. But God favors the fat portions of Abel rather than the fruits that Cain brought. Cain and Abel did not know the comforts which their father and mother once had. They each had to work hard to produce this food, which offered to God. And now this harsh judgment of God imposed upon them, on one favoring the other. Under the harsh conditions of judgment, impose further pressures, doesn't it? And as ever, when life becomes hard, we become depressed. And as so often is the case, in humanity, our emotions start to dictate our actions. And so the scene is set, and God speaks. It is as if God looks deep within the soul of Cain and calls out his feelings. God identifies Cain's hurt, that his offering is not up to scratch. He identifies Cain's anger, which is focused on both God and Abel. God identifies this simmering rage and jealousy that is building up inside Cain, a rage that goes beyond sibling rivalry. And God asks the question to Cain, "Why are you angry? Why is your face so downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted?" God tries to reassure Cain, come alongside Cain, and then offers advice. Sin is crouching at your door. Its desire to have you, but you must master it. God talks about sin as if it's alive, a living animal, a wild beast like a tiger or other ferocious cat, lurking to pounce at any moment. Just like last week when David told us about Cain's parents, Adam and Eve, who both had that growing niggle which grew inside them. This same niggle grows inside Cain, this feeling of being inadequate. God is saying, "Come on, Cain, you can do the right thing here. Do the right thing, and I will honor it." But sin is an aggressive force. It corrodes our morals like acid corrodes away at metal. It feeds our most vulnerable spot and prods and pokes it with precise skill. And if we are not to guard it, it grips us like a python and refuses to let go. Paul tells us this in Romans 7. Paul knows the power of sin. He knows the desire to allow it to take grip, to allow it to take control of our lives. Whenever we try to do the right thing, something else comes upon us and we move off the right thing towards the wrong thing if we do it by our own strength, says Paul. He knows the desire to allow it to take grip as Cain allowed it to do. Sin is deadly. And Cain desires sin. It offers what seems to be a way out, a freedom. But we are about to find out it is false freedom. As any good physicist will tell you, there is a consequence to every action we take. For every action, there is a reaction. This desire is the same thing that Eve felt as the serpent placed the idea, taking the forbidden fruit of the tree of knowledge, the desire of something which appears to be freedom, but actually leads to an inner darkness, a place of unrest. God places hope in front of Cain. God tells Cain there's another way. Even though sin appears to be a wild animal, it can be ruled. The fact that we always have a choice, the choice to do right and wrong. That is our godly gift, the gift of free will, a gift that seems to separate us from the rest of creation. So Cain goes out to meet his brother and invites Abel into the fields. And as they walk and talk away from the others, when they are completely alone, sin finally conquers Cain. It overcomes him with lust, and he attacks Abel. Abel falls to the ground, dead, and his blood drains away to the earth. God asks Cain, "Where is your brother?" God begins the investigation into Cain's actions. Cain retaliates, "I don't know. Am I his keeper?" Hoping to throw God off the scent. And that is what we try and do when we do something wrong, isn't it? We try and cover it up. We try and remove the evidence. We try and shirk the responsibility. And it's as if we are confronted like a teenager, pumped full of emotions. Our guilt is identified by our rage in our response as we are questioned. But the all-knowing God has seen Cain's actions. In fact, it is as if he has felt the disturbance of Abel losing his life. And he explains to Cain that his brother's blood cries out to God from the ground. The evidence is laid out in front of God. God gave Cain advice, gave Cain the option. But Cain allowed sin to entice him, allowed it to overpower him, until he had one option, one mind, one action which could be carried out. His jealousy over God favoring Abel's gift, his desire to be better than his brother, led him to take his own brother's life. He had freedom of choice, and he chose death, and therefore God curses the very ground which gave him good crops. No longer will he be able to survive the way he once did. He will now have to work even harder to survive. From the reality of what has happened, the reality of what happened hits Cain, and it hits Cain hard. He cries out to God for mercy, for a way out of this situation. And the compassionate life giver shows mercy on the life taker. God gives Cain a mark on his body to ensure no one will be able to kill Cain, even though Cain is a murderer. But the mark appears to be a two-edged sword. Cain discovers the acknowledgement of guilt, which lies to God's grace. We must confess. We must receive the relationship which God wants us to experience. The mark which Cain held showed that he had done wrong. But in doing that, he had God's protection over his life. The story runs from God's invitation to be responsible for our own actions, to Cain's refusal to be responsible, to God's settlement of the situation. The story of Cain and Abel is echoed through the Bible, particularly in Genesis, as I said, with brothers being against brothers and the younger often being against the eldest. But it even carries on into the New Testament. In Luke 15, Jesus tells us of the prodigal son. You know the story. The younger goes away and with his inheritance and squanders it, and eventually comes back to his father, cap in hand, with the intention of asking if he could be the father's servant. His father runs to meet him down the driveway with such compassion, with such love, and tells him not to be so silly. He will always have a place for his son. And the younger brother is reinstated into the household, into his former place. And as the brother of the field finds out he is working the land, it's as if he is Cain. He hears about it. He hears about the younger, how he is favored with such love and compassion, and is filled with jealousy and rage. That other brother could well have been Cain wanting to get rid of the one who appears to be receiving the greater love, where actually they are loved equally. And that is it, isn't it? We are all loved by God equally. It is how we respond to that love that is important. That is the key. When we look at the story, we should not just look at it as a story about murder or an appeal to have self-control. This gift of self-control, which the Spirit seems to often leave just outside our grasp, isn't it so difficult to have self-control? The story is one which is to bring awareness of the consequences of our actions. Awareness that every day we have potential to meet sin. The creature that is waiting to pounce, waiting in the corner of the room, hiding around every corner. Every day we experience the risk of potentially allowing sin into our hearts and to open ourselves up to the potential consequences. Every day we meet these challenges in our homes, in our workplaces, and even in church. Every day we meet these challenges. I could look at Niall or Liam today and say, I wish I had that gift, because I think his gift takes away the attention on me. He has the limelight. He's in the spotlight. And I forget about the fact that this gift is benefiting me. And I desire this gift, the attention it brings. If only I could get rid of Niall or Liam, and then my gift would not be overshadowed by theirs. But the thing is, we are all given different gifts. The gift of words, the gift of music, the gift of creating artwork, the gift of organization, the gift of accountancy, even the gift of keeping things neat and tidy. We are all called to do different things. And jealousy and desire often gets in the way of these gifts. We can fail to identify what we are good at by longing for the thing that somebody else does well. We are to live with our brothers and sisters in a relationship with God God. We are to live for the other. This relationship with God, that is something to be desired. Needs to occur between each one of us. As a spiritual family, we are to praise God together. The relationship with God extends through our brothers and sisters, through those inside and outside the church. And through this relationship, we nurture each other. If we can do that, others will want to come into it and celebrate it with us. It's not always easy to know if our goal, it's not always easy. But if our goal is to seek God's will, the relationship that unites will grow and unite others. John sums this up all rather nicely in 1 John 3, verses 11 to 15, where he tells us that there is one message that has been there since the very beginning of time, since Genesis, that we should love one another, that we shouldn't be like Cain, who has allowed sin to overtake him and murder his brother. He tells us this, that Cain's actions were evil, but Abel's were righteous. Do not be surprised by your brothers and sisters if the world hates you. We know that we have passed from death to life because we love each other. Anyone who does not love remains in death. It's unusual to find those around us to be separated from family. It's not unusual, to find those around us to be separated from family, for relationships to be broken. But we are all God's children, children of light, and we are to worship a God who is restorative. And as Cain discovered, a God is a God who is merciful. If we allow sin to entice us through Jesus' death and resurrection, we can ask for forgiveness, and our relationship with God is restored. As John told us, our Christian life is countercultural. It reaches across disagreements and segregation. Unfortunately, our human brokenness is too quick to hold on to our feelings and not to consider the other. And that is why we have to be able to avoid sin, which is waiting to pounce. Let us, as brothers and sisters, let us hold on to the truth of the resurrection and so sin cannot hold on to us. That we should deflect sin with what Paul calls the armor of God, with faith being our shield to extinguish the fiery arrows, with the breastplate of righteousness securely in place, and so we will stand tall, knowing that we are forgiven, with the helmet of salvation, with the belt of truth wrapped around our waist, holding up our trousers, and the sandal of peace strapped to our feet, so peace goes wherever we are. And of course, with the Bible firmly in our hand. We must never let go of the Bible. And in this state, we use prayer to enhance our relationship with God and to reinforce our faith. So today, come before God. Ask Him to reveal those hurts, those pains, those losses, those things that divide us. Bring them to His attention. And then ask for His forgiveness. So we are not ruled by sin. That sin has no hold over us as it held on to Cain. That we can be free to desire life to its fullness. Hold on to the truth.